Okay everyone, so in this next lesson, let's go and try to work on the section about. So let's go and work with our section about here and add some markup. So let's go and try to create a section here, div about for the container. Let's have an h2 with the class name about heading, then a div element that has a class name of about text that will contain a paragraph element, and let's format that. Let me increase we can actually increase our view here, guys. So at least it will be a lot bigger. That is another one of the features of Visual Studio Code. So you can actually go and use control plus equal sign here. So if I press on control plus equal sign, that will increase the view of your Visual Studio Code, and if you use control plus minus, it will be decreasing the view of your Visual Studio Code here. Okay, so let's decrease that a bit. So I think that would be good. Now let's go and try to add some lorem ipsum text here. Then control format. Let's save that and let's try to check first in our browser how this look. Let's refresh. We can't see the text here because of the color of the text is white, but it's already there. So let's go back to our text editor here. I just noticed that I nested the element here again in the wrong way. So let's type here about me. So be careful with your nesting, guys. That's actually something that I usually make a mistake with. I'm guilty of really experiencing that most of the time. Now let's go and create another div here that will contain an image, and inside of that an image that will contain an image pic class. Okay, so we have a div that has a class name about image, and then we have a pic here that is inside of this div that is inside of the container about. So that will be our markup here. Let me just add here the image that I'll use, and again you can use your own image here. So let me just go back to the browser and let's see if that will appear. And there's my image here. Let me just go and add an alternate text here. Rodrigo's profile picture. And then go here and add an about section. So let's go and select our about class div. I want to give it a height of 100 VH. The color of the text I want to be black. Text align will be center. Padding top will be 5%. Let's see how that will look. Okay, so it's aligned center here. Let's go back to our code editor. Now let's go and target the about heading. Font size will be 3 rem. Padding bottom, let's apply at least 5%. Let's go back to our, okay, so there's some space now here. Now let's go back to our style sheet here. About text, I would want to go and give this a background color of red first, so that we will be able to see where it is. width will be 65%. Let's go back to our browser, refresh. Okay, so there it is, the box from where our about text div is located. Now I would want to go and target the child element of this about div. So if we go back to our markup, that will be our paragraph element here. And one way to do this, guys, will be to use the descendant combinator. So if we go to our browser here and open, let me just Mozilla developer documentation, we can see here that the descendant combinator, typically represented by a single space character, here we can see here, combines two selectors such that elements matched by the second selector are selected if they have an ancestor, parent, parents, parent, parents, parents, parent, etc. Element matching the first selector. Selectors that utilize a descendant combinator are called descendant selectors. So we have here list items that are descendants of the my things list. So here we have my things, and this is the descendant of this my things list. The descendant combinator is technically one or more CSS white space characters. The space character or one of four control characters. The carriage return, form feed, new line, and tab characters. Between two selectors in the absence of another combinator. Additionally, the white space characters of which the combinator is comprised may contain any number of CSS comments. So we can see here the syntax selector 1, selector 2, and here are some of the examples. Now, if we try to go and analyze this, we have a list here. So this is the list that we want to apply a style of disk. And this list, which is this, has a div element and has another list inside of it that has another list, which is sub item A and B. And that is what we are targeting here. So this is the parent list and this is the descendant list that is nested inside of this unordered list. And we have another unordered list inside of the list of the unordered list. So this can be sometimes confusing, guys, but again, it's a matter of practice and you'll get used to how to use these kinds of selectors and how you can go and maximize the descendant combinator. So if ever you would want to use this syntax, at least you know that this is something that is quite possible for you to perform and used in your projects, okay? So if we try to analyze here, now we go down here, we have here the list 1, which is item 1. Okay, that is this item 1. We have here the parent under unordered list. Okay, so we have item 1 and item 2. And then we have here the sub item A and B. And we can see that here we have sub item A and B, sub item A and B. Okay, so you would see that the circle here is the one that is being applied when we tried to use the descendant combinator syntax, which involves the parent selector, element selector, which is the li, and the descendant child selector. Now let's try to go and apply that in our project. So if we go back to our markup here, we have our div element with the class name of about text, which is the parent element of our paragraph element here. And what we can do here is to go and target the about text class here and then the element selector paragraph so that we can go and apply some styling for this element, the paragraph element. So let me text align it to the left. Let's see how that will look. Let's refresh this and you would see now that our text inside of our div element the paragraph element has now been text aligned to the left. So let's add some padding here. Let's go back to our code editor. Padding 5%. Go back to our browser here, and there we go. Now let's try to go and target the div class about image here. And let's give it a background color of green, just so that we will see the element. Let's give it a height of 25 rem, width of 25 rem, and have it margin right of 15%. Let's go back to our browser here, and let's also give and target our class image here. Let's go back to our style sheet here. Image pic, about image pic. Let's give it a height of 100%, width of 100%, border radius of 50%. Let's see how that will look on our browser. And there we go. Now, let's give it a border of 0.5 rem, solid black. And there we go, we have a border now. And if you remember, we can try to reposition this by using the float property. So let's go and try to float our div here. Float to the right. Let's see how that will look. Okay, and this one, this element here, we would want to go and float it to the left. So that will be our div element here. Let's float it to the left. Now let's try to refresh our browser. And there we go. So we now have our about section, and we have repositioned our elements here the way we would want to go and see them side by side. Now let's just go and try to remove the background color. Control K and C. I usually just use this for me being able to identify the location of the element. So it's a placeholder background color. So now we now have the layout that we wanted based from the example that I showed you here. You would see now that we have the same positioning for our elements, same as here. So you can add some information about yourself here. In my case, I'm just going to go and copy paste the information that I've already prepared here so that we can go and replace this. And then refresh. And you would see that it's not that readable. If I try to read through it, I don't think this will be a good font family for large text. Unlike here, which is, it seems cool, or for my opinion, it seems cool. And I like the font style here. It makes it seem like it's a little bit techy. But here, if I'm the viewer of the site, I just think that this will be difficult for me to read. So let's go to Google Font and try to choose a different font family. So let me open Google Font here. And let's go and try Roboto here. I've selected the font weight 700. So if we go click here, font size will be 40 pixels. And then the bold 700 is the one that I chose for this case. So let's go and copy this. Go to our styling or to our markup first. Then apply that here. And then get the font family here. And then give that to our paragraph here. Now let's try to refresh this. And there we go. I think this is much better. It's a lot easier to read for my opinion. So you can try to play around again, guys. You don't have to really totally copy what we are doing here. We're already done with you trying to figure out the ways that we positioned our element here. We just need to consider here the user experience of visitors to our site. So try to figure out or try to implement a different font that you prefer. But for me, I think this will be already good. Let's just apply a little bit more of line height here. Line height of 2.5 rem. And then refresh. And I think that will be much better. Let's see if we go and make it 2.8. So again, this is a matter of testing things out. And I think this is a lot more readable and much easier for viewers to read. That's why I added the line height here. So I think that will be good now, guys. So that will be all for this lesson. I'm hoping that you learned a lot in this session and you were able to try to figure things out. And of course, again, be innovative. I highly recommend that you try to figure things out. You might even be much better than me when it comes to design and you have an eye for design. So I would highly recommend that try to implement and practice your creativity when you're developing your websites or your projects. I would highly promote you to be original. Try to learn from us, your professors, your teachers. This is something that I always tell my students. Try to learn from us, try to learn from our mistakes, try to learn from the things that we are sharing to you guys. It's perfectly okay for you to make mistakes. That's part of life. This is something that I always tell my students. The only thing here that I just want to make sure of will be just to be original with your own mistakes. That I always tell this to them as a reminder because of course we don't want to waste your time in making the same mistakes. It's just a life tip that I give my students. I normally share to my students my mistakes in life, so at least they will have some ideas because I believe those are the things that I would want to go and prevent my students from also experiencing. And that's why I'm highly recommending that you be original with your own mistakes. So that's just something that I wanted to share, guys. Coding for me has really helped me out in developing critical thinking skills, and I believe that this is really related to life skills that can help an individual improve his personal and professional life. So as I've always told my students, life is more on an if else statement, decisions that we make. So it's similar to coding. We make mistakes. We have to debug things. We have to identify the bug, the problem, so that we can try to find a solution to it, right? We don't just set aside the bug and we do not admit that there's a bug in the system, right? We need to make sure that we get to find that bug and try to correct it so that we can improve our design, our system, our program. And that is similar to life. That means we need to improve ourselves. We need to admit that there is something wrong. As according to one of my favorite martial artists, which is Bruce Lee, he said that I know that I have grown when I have admitted I have committed a mistake. So that's something that I just want to share to my students. I always share that to my students actually. In life, we should always be evaluating our decisions, our if and else statements. So in programming, our if and else statements, and in life, our decisions. Identify the problem so that we can solve the problem. So here we encountered the problem. We saw that the text was not that readable. So we decided to evaluate and change and improve and try to find a solution to the problem. And that would be to find a much better font. One of the other most common life tip that I actually give my students will be to also remind them about the importance of being original. I highly promote originality. It's okay for you to see other people's work. It's okay for you to get some inspiration from other people's work, but try to implement your own originality. And even in life, guys, that's something that I always tell my students. I always remind them that it's okay for you to make mistakes, but as much as possible, be original with your own mistakes because I just want my students to realize that you will just be wasting your time, your most important asset, if ever you will be committing the same mistakes that has been made or that has been done by other people, right? I just wanted to share that additional information so at least you'll have some ideas. Now, guys, let's go and try to finish our section here. I'm going to add all of the changes that we've made. Git commit here and then a message, add about section, and let's go and push the changes to our repository. And now let's try to check our remote repository. Let's go to our URL here, and we can now see that our about section has now been updated in our GitHub account. That will be all for this lesson. I'm hoping you learned a lot in this session. So thank you guys and see you on our next lessons.